um, we are recording this webinar, which your team, anybody can access later on. So yeah, before we actually go live, and since we still have attendees joining in, we can have some informal discussion, and then we'll move on to our more formal and more panel discussion orientation. You said the e-commerce business has grown almost 6 times in the last few months. So, and initially it was not your focus, I guess, right?
Well, we launched e-commerce 4 years ago, but we haven't, it hasn't been a large part of our business. We are known as a destination store. We have lots of activities here, lots of in-store tasting, so people seem to like to come here to shop. But with the COVID situation starting 3 months ago, we really ramped up our e-commerce offers as well as our delivery offer. And so we went from doing 3 to 5 deliveries a day to doing up to as many as 180 to 200.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So we have the attendees coming in. So let's begin the session. Peggy and Lars, first of all, I want to thank you both from the bottom of my heart to coming up and doing this webinar with us. And especially Peggy, who is doing it at 8 a.m. her time. And thank you for taking it up. So I want to start with introducing myself and my company, and then I will introduce Peggy and Lars. So hello everyone, my name is Amit Koshal. I'm a co-founder of a company called Enalito. We are based out of India, and we are an AI product company, and we provide AI product, our technology, to e-commerce companies. Lars is one of our clients who has been using our technology, our product from many months now. And we also help a lot of other e-commerce players from various sectors, from wine to apparel to any type of goods who are selling stuff online. We help them with technology, we help them with segmentation, we help them with email marketing campaigns, predictive analysis, customer segmentations, and a lot about personalization. So now I'd like to introduce Peggy. So Peggy is the president of Willow Park Wines and Spirits and has been in the company's principal wine buyers since the store opening 1994. She is a native Prince Edward Island. Perry received her formal education degrees in both business and education at the University of Pi, and that was owned in France. Now I can go on, Perry, but I would like that if you tell your story to all the panelists and attendees yourself. I mean, coming it from you would make more thinking about you. Please share your story, Peggy.
Okay, well, I've been in the wine business since 1985 after a few years of study in France. And I helped open the very first private, one of the very first private wine stores here in Alberta, Canada. So we are very much a monopoly controlled country with one province, Alberta, having 100% privatization that started in 1985. So I've been involved since the beginning. In 1994, the largest store, Willow Park Liquor Store, was purchased by entrepreneur Wayne Hennessy, and with it came a huge Bordeaux selection. And I decided to start working again after being home for a few years with a young family, because I was so interested in having the opportunity to create a very vibrant retail operation focusing on high-end, world-famous wines and using a strong and very colorful education program to sell wine. And so that's how we arrived at having one of the most education-rich retail operations in North America, with up to 10 to 12 events a week being offered to consumers and trade. And I think that's an important thing to mention, is that in Alberta, as a retailer, we can also be a wholesaler. And currently we provide products to about 20% of the license on-premise accounts in Alberta. and that represents about $80 million in business on the wholesale side of our business. So it's an interesting model. It's an unusual model in this retail wholesale combination. So yeah, we've been quite successful and have grown our business 6 times since privatization came in 1994.
Wonderful, wonderful, Peggy. So Peggy, you mentioned to me that you do wholesale, you do retail, and you also do e-commerce. Now, so how has been the e-commerce business for you in the last few months? How was it before COVID?
Well, with e-commerce, we always had a pretty strong, we've been growing our e-commerce business the last 4 years, each year doubling sales. But since COVID hit in mid-March, our e-commerce business has gone up 600%. And so that's been tremendous for us because, of course, our wholesale business disappeared. So it really helped to have the e-commerce business so strong.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, wonderful. So you also are supplying across Canada, and you mentioned that you have monopoly in across Canada. So who do you consider as your competitors in this market in the e-commerce business?
There's 2 other retail operators here that have quite successful e-commerce businesses. And so they're quite a bit smaller in size than we are, but they were a little bit ahead of us out of the gate with e-commerce. So there's 2 retailers, Zinn and Highlander, that have really strong e-commerce programs.
Wonderful, wonderful, interesting. So Peggy, thank you so much. I'll come back to you. Let me switch on to Lars now for some time. Lars, thank you so much for coming this morning. I would request you to kindly share your story. You have spent a lot of years in the wine industry, and you said your 99% of your business is online, and you have been selling wines for decades. Please share your story.
Sure. So we're a little different company than Peggy, even though we're in the same business. I started the company in 2003. Really focused on being wine storage only. We didn't become wine merchants until 2009. We've organically grown the business over that period. And so now we really have 2 businesses, which is fine wine storage and fine wine sales. We sell direct to consumer. We don't have a wholesale business like Peggy does. In the state of New York and in almost every state in the United States, you have to, except for California, you really have to pick one or the other. You can't be a retailer and a wholesaler, and it's not permitted by law. So we do work with wholesalers in that we buy wine from them, but we are not one. So really, talk quickly about our wine storage business. So in this facility I'm in here in New York City, we have 25,000 square feet here. We have about 21,000 of that is temperature and humidity controlled wine storage. In that space, we have the wines that belong to about 400 private clients, and we have 2 major auction houses that store wine here as well. So it's quite a busy place because there's fulfillment happening here for our storage business, our retail business, and 2 auction businesses. And then also in this space, we have our office and then a small wine showroom. When we started becoming wine merchants in 2009, we were really early. Maybe we were too early to the e-commerce game. We've been online only ever since then. And we've learned a lot along the way. We've seen the cost of e-commerce drop radically over that period of time. We've been able to decrease our technology costs consistently year after year, and we have a far more sophisticated system now than we did 10 years ago. The way we sell wine, we're in we're in the premium segment, you know, if not the super premium segment. So our average transaction, online transaction, is about $800, and we're, you know, our average bottle price is around $60 or $70. So we're very much in that part of the market. We do sell less expensive wines from time to time, but it's not what we're known for. But we do enjoy you know, finding stuff that's value based, and we do push it, but it's not the core of our business. On the wine retail business, we really get wine from 4 places. Our storage clients in this facility, the software that runs that business is connected to our e-commerce website. So storage clients can post wine from their private collections for sale onto our e-com website with they can pick their own price and post it for sale. And that happens whenever they wish to do that. So that's one source of wine. And we also buy wine from New York wholesalers, which is more of a traditional source. And then we buy wine in France and in London. Over the past 5 years, on the technology side of things, we've made investments in a new e-commerce platform. We're currently on a platform called WooCommerce. We've also invested in you know, marketing programs and software like Enalito to automate as much as possible. We've tried to automate as many processes as possible in our business, particularly on the merchandising side. When we first started in e-commerce, one of the things that took us so much time was listing products for sale. So over the past 5 years, we've tried to automate the listing as much as possible, and we've done that by networking our e-com website with APIs, using APIs whenever possible back to our suppliers, so that we can have live, real-time virtual inventory. And that not only cuts our labor costs down for posting wine, but it's allowed us to dramatically reduce the amount of capital we have in inventory. And that's been very, very successful. However, you know, that's a fairly sophisticated thing, and not that many people in the wine business are able to communicate via API accurately and consistently. So as a result, we've done those connections where we can, and then we've built other pieces of software to mimic a similar process. So that's really what we look like. Our customers are concentrated in the New York area. I would say 60% are in the 3 states around here: New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. We do have customers spread out across the rest of the country, and we fulfill that business as well. In the United States, there are issues with shipping wine across state lines. There are, as a result, our industries created all kinds of workarounds for that because they've had to, and so we're really able to reach about 40 to 42 states right now with FedEx or UPS. So that's kind of what we are and what we do. We're continuing to build out that electronic connection capability back to our suppliers. We're launching a new order management software. It's really a piece of middleware that will sit in the middle of our business and manage all the data. It'll also have built-in APIs that we can hand to potential vendors and say, look, if you want to talk to us electronically, here's the roadmap. And so that's kind of the next step there. So that's us. I'm the founder, sole owner, no other shareholders. We're 10 people, but we do a lot with 10 people. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. Guys, thank you. We're getting questions from the attendees. Guys, please go ahead and put your questions in the quick Q&A. And my colleague Katie will collate these questions and will ask the panelists in between. So, Lars, you mentioned that you are not focusing too much on California, and you also I was to understand why did you say that, and then I also read that California is focusing a lot on sustainable wines. So, what's your take on sustainable wines and promoting sustainable wines?
Sorry, I didn't get the second half of what you said. You broke up there. Could you just repeat that question?
Sure. I said you spoke about California, that you're not doing too much business in California. So
Right.
we wish to understand why. And we wish to also understand that so California is focusing on a lot on sustainable wines, like producing and promoting sustainable wines. What is your take on sustainable wines in the US?
Well, sustainable is a very broad term. I mean, as a business owner, I mean, sustainable to me means you're making money. But leaving that aside, you know, there's a lot of different movements in the wine business for sustainable wines, for natural wines, for biodynamic wines, and you know, if you get a group of wine lovers around the table, they'll talk all day long and maybe not come to an agreement about the benefits of one versus the other. The other part of your question, which I think is more towards our California we have quite a few customers in California and other states besides New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. However, California is a very liberal state in terms of its wine laws. So in California, you can be an importer, a wholesaler, and a retailer, and you can be an online only retailer. And it's frankly, I believe it's the only state in the country that's possible. So they have a very well developed retail presence, and there are 5 or 6 major retailers there that source lots of wine in Europe and elsewhere, and that we compete directly with. So the California wine consumer is very well served. We do get some of them. But you know, they have a very healthy retail business in that state without a lot of restrictions. So.
Okay, interesting. Peggy, coming to you, unlike Lars, and Lars has restrictions that he can't be wholesaler as well as retailer. So he's primarily a retailer. You are a wholesaler, a retailer, and you're also in the e-commerce space. Now, I wish to understand from you, Peggy, what are the challenges you're facing in your e-commerce business and how are you resolving them? So if you can perhaps talk about the two biggest challenges you're facing and how perhaps are you resolving them?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we are facing huge growth with e-commerce, and essentially we're just trying to manage that growth. So we continue to add employees, and we've increased our hours, we've increased our delivery drivers. We are shipping using Canada Post, so we don't use FedEx or UPS. We've actually struck an arrangement with Canada Post. So if it's not a local delivery, meaning within the, you know, Calgary proper or the communities around Calgary, we use Canada Post. And we're also faced with some kind of gray areas in terms of shipping to other provinces. And we're dealing with that on a province by province basis. But with COVID and the growth of people shopping from home, there has been a little bit more opportunity maybe to ship across provincial borders without worrying so much about implications from the different governing bodies in each province. So, but one of the workarounds for us, Lars mentioned workarounds, is that we are using an outside shipper. So we essentially aren't contracting the services of Canada Post. The shopper is. So in Canada, you can pretty much arrange to ship wine or alcoholic products across the provincial border if you, the individual, is making the arrangement. So as a retailer, we can't make that arrangement. So it's up to our customers via our website to make that arrangement directly with Canada Post.
Interesting. That's an interesting concept. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So now let me ask my colleague Katie to do a poll questions. We have, Katie, can you please put the poll questions which can be answered by the panelists as well as the attendees? So here we have the first question. Has your e-commerce business grown in the last 3 months? So the host and panelists cannot vote. So Katie, can you please allow the host and panelists to vote as well? And meanwhile, all the attendees can tell us whether their business, whether their e-commerce business has grown in the last 3 months or not. Katie, maybe you have to launch the poll again so that Peggy and Lars can also answer the question. You can launch the poll again so that everybody can answer the question, and then you can perhaps display the results to everybody. All right. So Katie, since you have the answers, can you please display the results to everybody? What are people saying about their business? All right. So 86% people said that the e-commerce business has grown in the last 3 months. Wonderful. Wonderful. Good to know. And a small bunch is saying that their business has not grown in the last 3 months. Interesting. Right. So, Lars, coming back to you,
Yes.
You were talking about some technologies that you have been using. You have changed from a previous platform to WooCommerce. Which was the previous platform you were using, and why do you prefer WooCommerce over the previous platform, and why it is better than the previous platform?
So we've been on 2 platforms since we started. We started with Magento in the early days before Magento was purchased by eBay, and they were a much more nimble company then, and they were really out in front for e-commerce platforms. We were with them for 7 years approximately, and it was a good platform, but the price increases were relentless. So we went to WooCommerce in 2017, and it's really a world of difference. I mean, I happen to have a great technical resource who is behind that, and that's a big part of it. But it's just a world of difference because of not only are the ongoing costs minimal, but just the universe of software plugins that's available for different business to support different business processes, and the cost for those is so low these days that it's just an order of magnitude difference than when we started 10 years ago.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're getting some really good questions from the attendees. I would like to pronounce those questions for you. So one of the questions that we have from one of the attendees is that we have seen a surge in e-commerce. You have a lot more new clients than you had previously. A lot more new clients have been added in the last 3 months. How do you plan to retain these new clients? What's the plan for them? How do you keep this growth in the upward direction?
Well, I think that's a great question because I've been thinking about that myself. Our business, our e-commerce business, which is our business, as I said, we are 99% that. Our business is up about 45% in the past 3 months. And we have seen a whole new type of customer coming to us. We have our old customers, but we have a whole new customer who's really buying for immediate consumption or near-term consumption. We're getting more customers like that who either don't want to go out or don't want to go into a store or whatever. You know, I think we will lose some of them when things normalize, because people do like to go to stores and sort of poke around. However, if we're strong with our fulfillment and strong with our service, you know, I think we can probably keep a decent amount of them once all this passes. So
interesting. So Peggy, so you have seen a growth of 600% in the last 3 months in your e-commerce business. How do you plan to retain this growth? How do you plan to retain these new customers?
Well, we're already studying the customer patterns that have emerged, and one of the things we quickly did about 4 to 6 weeks ago is we looked at customers who were dropping the frequency of their shop. And so we, you know, are studying customers who aren't returning, and we've sent out an offer to all those customers to see, you know, if we can entice them back. The other thing we did is we took the top 150 customers who had shopped with us, for example, more than 10 times in the past year, and had average carts of over $200, but hadn't returned to us in the last 60 days. And so we sent all of those customers a survey with an incentive to complete the survey. So yeah, we're definitely continually looking at our customer base and making sure that they're returning to us to shop once again.
Wonderful. So you do a lot of data analytics about frequency, about recency, who is coming when, and when should you reach back to them. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's also being offered in Enalito as one of our main features of the product. Wonderful. So one of the other questions that one of the attendees has is that do you also deal with non-alcoholic beverages? Because the question is that with the lifestyle changing in the COVID times, people are more and more conscious about their immunity, about what they are consuming. Do you also think there will be an upsurge in the non-alcoholic beverages, and would you want to pivot yourself in that direction, selling non-alcoholic beverages?
Yeah, we have increased our non-alcoholic beverage selection, and there has been a huge increase in those sales. And so we're allowed in this, under this jurisdiction, this province, we're allowed to sell non-alcoholic juices, mixes, non-alcoholic wine, beer, and spirits. And so we've expanded all that selection, and those sales have doubled in the last 90 days.
Wonderful. What about you, Lars?
Well, that's not a business we're in, and and it's there are some regulations here preventing us from doing that. I'm pretty sure it would have to be marketed separately. So while it is growing for Peggy, that's not something we're looking at this time.
Yeah, because of the regulations. I understand the regulations in the US for Lars and for Canada, for Peggy in Canada are quite different, which are actually determining your strategies in those markets. So one of the questions that has come up is that, do any of you do organic SEO? Like, how are your rankings? Do you guys do online advertising? Maybe Lars can answer it first.
I'll go first. So with SEO, you know, we've wrestled with SEO for years, and we've concluded that that it's not the right way for us to market our business. It's hard. there's a lot of competition out there for that, you know, for the keywords that we're looking for. And you can say the same thing about Google advertising. And it just hasn't made sense. And there's also a lot of people in the SEO business that don't know what they're doing. So it's hard to figure out who knows and who doesn't know. So we actually have a very limited advertising budget. Our biggest advertising expense is winesearcher.com, which is the number one wine search engine, at least in the United States, and they're a company out of New Zealand, actually. So we like referral from existing customers. We get a lot of referral from Wine Searcher, and we've steadily grown over the past 3 years our direct business, i.e. our customers just coming to us direct without any referral, and that number's at about 35% now of our homepage traffic, and that's up from 10 or 15 3 years ago. So that's the best, because that's just customers coming back to you because they've done business with you before, or they've heard of you, and you're not paying for that traffic.
So Lars is not a very good fan of SEO or advertising. How about Peggy?
We do some SEO work, not a lot. We mostly what we find works the best is working with various influencer platforms and doing special campaigns with them. Like for example, Date Night YYC has 120,000 followers. I really like their demographic. It's super young. And one of the most important objectives that I have here at Willow Park Wines and Spirits is to drive down the average age of my consumer. And so I work with a lot of Instagram, Facebook, influencers, and try to reach out to their audiences that are identified as being under 35 years of age.
So you want people to start drinking young?
Yeah, because that's when you can influence their decisions.
Interesting. Good.
Well, they drink the most too. People between the ages of 21 and 35, right? And so you want them to be your customer. But the really most important thing to keep in mind is you do not want your customers to die with you, right? So you don't want your customers to be the same age as you. In my case, I'm celebrating my 60th birthday soon. And, people who are turning 60, their cellars are full, they drink less, they're much more health conscious. And so, no, I'm looking at consumers half my age.
Interesting. Good thought, Peggy. One of the questions that we have is, he is asking, which are top selling wines in the US? Are they from the US or from the Europe or from New Zealand or Australia? What do you sell most? Which country wine do you sell most? France?
California.
French wines? California wine?
Yeah, number one category is California, United States, but California dominates. And the number two category for us is France. The number three category is Canada. Okay. So most liquor stores in Canada, the number one category would be Canada. So we don't follow that trend. Okay.
So like for you, it's California, then French wines, and then Canadian wines.
Yeah.
How would you differentiate these wines in terms of their taste and their how to differentiate these wines? Why are they so different, and what makes Californian wines number one?
Well, I'm in Western Canada. So I'm in Western Canada, and a lot of our customers go to California, to the wine country there, mostly Napa and Sonoma. And so that's, for many of them, it's their first out-of-country wine experience. And we started working really closely with the vintners of Napa and Sonoma back in 1996 because as a wine specialist who specialized in France and Italy, that was my specialty, I realized I needed to change my focus because I felt that the biggest potential for growth in the retail business in Canada, Western Canada, was to focus on California wines. And so, and that did prove to be the case. So, and plus it was easy for me to work with the vintners in California and get them to come to Alberta. It's a 2-hour flight. And I could have, visiting principals like Jack and Dolores Cake Bread of Cake Bread Cellars, be here and, wow our customers, because in-store tastings were so important to us, and bringing that experience to our customers was really important.
Now, California as a state focuses a lot on sustainable wines. So what is your take on sustainable wines?
We were the first retailer in Canada to develop an organic wine selection, and that was 15 years ago.
Wow.
It was two ahead of the curve, actually. And so we let it go to the wayside, and now we just identify organic wines by signage in every category. It's a hugely important category, especially for the younger demographic. And, I'm in touch with some of the monopolies in Scandinavia, for example. I know some of those people, and they are not even looking at anything these days that is not sustainable, organic, and preferably biodynamic. And so I feel that that's the trend that we have to be on top of.
This is something very interesting for everyone on this discussion, that sustainable wine is the way to go. People are looking for products which are sustainable, which will make the planet greener. What is your take on, Lars, now for Peggy, it was California, then French wine, and then Canadian wines. Which wines do you sell the most in the 1 to 3 order?
So number one for us by a large margin is France, and then Italy, and then I would say the U.S., Germany, Austria, Spain, and a little bit of Argentina and Chile, but really France is the big part of it.
Interesting. I want to pull up a slide here. I want your views on that slide. Okay. Can you see my slide, guys?
Yes.
So this is the US wine industry annual revenue impact. Okay. So it says the on-premise is going to go down by $2.5 billion. Direct to consumer will go down by approximately $300 million or $0.3 billion. Wine tasting rooms where Napa Valleys of the world will suffer losses worth $3 billion. And this is just in this year. This is just in 2020. And this wine grapes will go down by $1.4 billion, and the off-premise, that is the e-commerce, will grow by approximately $1.4 billion. So I would like to have your views on this slide, guys. Maybe we can start with Peggy first.
So you're calling off.
Also, what would be the situation in Canada if this is mostly US?
So you're saying you're identifying off-premise as being e-commerce?
Mostly e-commerce, yes, and retail. Retail will increase and e-commerce will increase, but mostly e-commerce.
Okay, so I would agree with this. This is what we're seeing here in Western Canada. And of course, we all know that visitors to the various wine regions are going to decrease tremendously because of the inability for consumers to travel. So, you know, I would say that your slide reflects accurately what is happening.
Interesting, interesting. What about you, Lars? What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, I wonder how they came up with those estimates, but I will say, you know, it is reflective of what I hear going on in the industry, at least here in New York, where restaurant business is essentially gone, and retail, what they call off-premise, is a mixed bag. If you're good at e-commerce and good at fulfillment, you know, you're doing well. If you don't have those capabilities and you're bringing stuff to the front door, or letting a limited amount of people into your store, you're not doing as well. So I think it's accurate, probably.
Interesting, interesting. Let's go for one more poll questions. Katie, can you please launch a second poll question where everybody can answer, including Peggy and Lars? All right. So the question is, do you use artificial intelligence-based apps for your business growth? Katie, can you publish the results for everybody? All right. So while we get the report on the screen, Peggy, so do you use AI, artificial intelligence, for your e-commerce? I'm assuming yes.
Yes. Yeah.
To what extent? What does your AI app do? What does your AI engine do?
Well, I don't really know. That's not something that I look after.
Okay.
So I just get the results.
Okay. Okay.
So unfortunately, I can't tell you that. That's, you know, I have a person that looks after that for me, and I just get the results from him.
All right. All right. So about 50% use AI and 50% people do not use AI in their business, which is a good indication. Lars, what about you? You use AI for sure because you use Enalito.
Yeah.
Apart from Enalito, so if you can talk about a little bit about Enalito, how the Enalito AI engine helping you in your business?
Yeah, so we're using really two forms of AI. The Enalito, I would consider AI, and then we also, as part of these, what I described earlier, our API electronic connections to our suppliers. Those have built-in dynamic pricing algorithms that automatically price stock for sale, and they go out and those algorithms draw data in from Wine Searcher, so we can see what our competition is doing with pricing, and then we can price products on the fly based on what the market is and what our financial parameters are. So those are the two really main instances of us doing that. The algorithms we built ourselves. The AI, the Enalito, of course, we're purchasing from you. You know, I find the win back component, which is really the biggest component of Enalito for us. I find that AI capability, you know, the ability to put your customers in all these different baskets that you guys have, and then track their movement back and forth in between those baskets of frequency, recency, etc. You know, that's pretty powerful. It's one of the reasons why we you know, signed up for your product. So and then tying that to automated marketing is you know, we've been doing automated marketing before Enalito, but tying your AI to that has been good for us. And to go back to one of the earlier questions, I think that will help us retain some of these new customers as well that we're seeing.
Yes. So. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lars. I want to now take your attention to one more slide. I'll quickly share my screen. Right. So these are the number of US wineries, and this data is by wineinstitute.org. They say that 97% of the wineries in the US make less than 5,000 cases a year. So, and the most impacted wineries would be the small and the medium wineries, uh, which might just go out of business and which also have tough days ahead. Now, there are 56 wineries who make over 500,000 cases a year, 246 wineries, almost 50,000 to 500,000 wine cases, and almost 6,000 plus wineries are under 1,000 cases a year. Now, what's your take on it? For Canada, Peggy, what would be the numbers? Would you have some idea about it?
You know, I don't have the numbers for what's happening here with our wineries, but I would think they wouldn't be in quite the dire straits that you're forecasting for the American wineries, because it has not been the practice for wineries in Canada to focus solely on on-premise. That's much more of a trend with those smaller wineries in the United States. So I would think that our Canadian wineries would not be, facing closures, as much as you're going to see in America.
Okay. Okay. And why do you think it will not affect too much in Canada, but US might have a bigger issue to solve?
Well, because Canadian wineries do not focus on premise.
Okay, because
they
do not
focus
on premise.
primarily on retail sales at their properties, because the financial advantages to being a farm gate winery when you're a smaller winery are huge, tax-wise, especially. And so the smaller wineries do tend to sell most of their product at their own retail shops located at the wineries.
Interesting, which is not the case for the US wineries.
Well, I think a lot of smaller wineries in the US are definitely focused on premise, but maybe Lars could comment on that.
Sure.
Well, I'm not in that end of the business, but I will say that I think the high volume people in the US will probably be okay for a lot of reasons that I won't get into. There is a focus, there is for sure a focus among California producers to serve only in restaurants. You see that, I see that all the time here in New York, where a supplier says to me, well, this product is 80% for restaurants and 20% for retail. And that's a very common thing. So I think that those folks that have put those restrictions on their distribution are certainly going to be grasping for answers. However, I will say, if wine consumption stays the same in the United States or continues to grow slightly, it's going to have to be supplied. And I don't think that all consumers are just going to automatically start drinking wine from vineyards that make 3 million cases a year. People drink wines from small to medium-sized producers for very specific reasons. They're not manufactured, mass-produced wines. So I think the customer demand is going to remain. I think the market will just have to adapt somehow.
So Peggy mentioned that she is focusing more on the younger generation. She is going to Instagram and she's going to Facebooks of the world to get the younger generation on board. What's your strategy for customer acquisition?
Well, we have the same motivation. We don't want to wind up with a entirely older customer base. We're a little different in that since we are a pretty high price point and a pretty high average transaction size. And we do sell quite a few collectible wines. You know, those tend to be people who are, you know, probably well into their 30s or experiencing higher incomes. So I'm always looking to bring people up, but I would say our core customer is in their 40s and 50s. And we always try to get new ones in. I mean, I think our e-commerce platform, the ease of use of it, the sophistication of it, the making it hassle-free for the customer to buy from us, those things are all they're attractive to everybody, but they're particularly attractive to the younger generation.
Interesting.
So we're always trying to make that customer experience on the e-commerce side as smooth as possible. Listen to what they're saying in terms of their observations about our checkout, our merchandising, our fulfillment, that kind of thing. So.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, KD, can you launch the two poll questions that are remaining? We'll quickly get the answers and then we'll proceed to wrap up. Thank you so much. Do you want your... So this question is, do you know which customer will buy what from you tomorrow? Are you able to predict the buying behavior of your customers? Because a lot of people buying different type of wines, different spirits. So do you know this customer is going to be drinking red Cabernet wine, French wine tomorrow night? All right. So if you have the answers, KD, can you please publish the report? Yeah, KD, we will. Okay, so almost 80% people do not know which customers, what the customer gonna buying from them tomorrow. All right, KD, you also want to launch the last poll question right now, since we have just few minutes left before we wrap up. All right, so guys, for all the panelists and for all the attendees, do you know which customers you're about to lose? Like specifically that these people, they might not come back. I'm gonna lose them. So do you know which are the ones you're gonna be losing? Katie, can you please publish a report for everybody's benefit? All right, so some of us know which 71% people do not know which customers they're about to lose. All right, Peggy, right. So Peggy, do you know which customers you're about to lose tomorrow or in the next 1 month?
No, but it's just data we haven't bothered looking at really, other than the one example I gave you where we wanted to track customers that we apparently lost. So I did give you one example. So we're playing catch up in that circumstance, but because we're managing growth here, that hasn't been a priority, but we are starting to look at customers that we are losing.
Interesting. I'm sure that answer Lars has is that he knows which customers he's about to lose because he's using Enalito, and we have given him strategies on how to win those customers back. Before we finally conclude, any final word from you, Peggy and Lars? Peggy first. Peggy can go first.
No, I just found it very interesting, and thank you very much for
inviting me. Advice you wanted to attending this?
Sorry, say that again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm asking any advice you want to give to people out there who are watching you right now and who have big dreams of becoming big wine sellers. And any advice, piece of advice you want to give them?
Well, I think, analyzing your data is probably the most important thing to stay on top of what your customers are looking for and what they're hoping to buy. Your other question was, do we know what people are going to buy tomorrow? We do. We're watching our data constantly. And so when we put an offer out, we can pretty much know exactly what the sales are going to be. And so that's pretty powerful in terms of watching our inventories and buying the right amounts. So I think data analyzing is the most important thing you can do, especially on an e-commerce platform.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good piece of advice. Data is the key. What about you, Lars? What advice would you give to the viewers today?
Well, I would say, take advantage of what's going on in the world. In that technology is inexpensive and widely available and really good. Think about the pain points in your business, operationally, financially, and think about how you can use technology to solve that. Don't try to bite off gigantic software projects that can tank you, but do it within reason, and use data as much as possible to keep people, to get new customers, and to grow your business with the minimum amount of overhead possible. That's really the key. Inventory is a big risk in this business. People like Peggy, who have a very large store, traditionally have a better opportunity to manage that. When you're e-commerce only, like we have, you have less of an ability to stay on top of your inventory by moving it out quickly at lower prices. So that's the advice I'd have.
Wonderful, wonderful. So do not take up large software development projects. Go step by step. Work with small apps to improve your customer retention, customer acquisition. Thank you so much. Let me just check one more time if we have more questions by any of the attendees. I hope I have addressed all the questions. All right. So yes, most of the questions are answered. All right. I wish to thank both of you for coming this morning. We cannot be more thankful for the lack of words. Please accept our sincere thanks for coming this morning and educating so many people who are watching you at the moment. And this video, which is being recorded, will go on YouTube, will also go on several different social media platforms, so that people like the budding entrepreneurs, people working in the wine industry can learn from this panel discussion. Thank you so much, guys, for coming this morning and sharing your thoughts and being so insightful about what you guys are doing and being so open about sharing your little secrets, sharing your learnings, and sharing your vast experience. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye. Good night. Have a good day.